Hey everybody, welcome to another action-packed, exciting episode of Scotty's Record Shop. Before we get into the subject that we're going to tackle today, I want to say hello and welcome to our new subscribers. I believe we got a couple of them. I know we've lost a few and we gain a few. It's kind of a, two steps forward, or one step forward, two steps back, but we're still moving forward, and that's all that really matters. So I'd like to say welcome to you guys, and hello to everybody. And as always, I appreciate each and every one of you. I really sincerely do, as my daughter is blowing up my phone. Anyway, um, earlier this week, I did a video, albums you should know about, and I focused on Badfinger's Straight Up album from 1971. And I had mentioned in that video that I was thinking very strongly about doing a ranking the Badfinger catalog video. And, well, here it is. Okay, so we're going to look at the studio albums by Badfinger. Some, obviously by now I think you know the way this goes. No live albums, no compilations, although there's some really nice, the BBC stuff is really good. I'm not going to look at the most recent thing that Joey Mullen did where he had guests performing Badfinger songs, although that was a pretty good collection as well. Um, so I'm not going to include that. I'm also obviously not going to include any solo stuff, the Pete Ham demo stuff that's come out or whatever. None of that's there in here. However, some of that's really good. I encourage you to look at that stuff. However, I am going to be throwing in here the Iveys, which really is Badfinger before they were called Badfinger. And I'll talk about that album and how that came about and all that stuff when we get to it. Just very briefly, I was I'm a second generation Badfinger fan. And I found out about them at probably the worst possible time, or I really realized I liked them, I should say, at the worst possible time. It was around 1978, and something in my little teenage mind connected all of these really great songs, No Matter What, Come and Get It, Day After Day, Baby Blue. It connected. Wait a minute, this is all one band, and this band really sounds good. I'm going to buy their albums. No, you're not. 1978, there was nothing in print by Badfinger. All of that earlier back catalog that was on Apple and Warner Brothers had long since been deleted. There was no way to get any of it. I didn't know anybody that I could take in who had any of it, other than some radio stations. I was able to talk some radio stations, or a radio station, to making some cassette copies of a couple of albums of theirs. So that was my introduction. And then, right about shortly after I got turned on to them, they reformed and put out a couple of albums, and that was like heaven for me. I didn't understand that it wasn't the full band. I didn't know the history. If you want to know the history of Badfinger, there's plenty of videos out there and documentaries that discuss the history of this band. Incredibly sad. Their manager destroyed that band, ripped them off to the point where band members killed themselves over being overwhelmed and broke and everything, and that is so sad. Very talented. Pete Ham and Tom Evans were both very super talented guys. Anyway, let's get into it, okay? Might be a little controversial in some places for some of you diehard Badfinger fans. It's like, how dare you put this low or whatever. These are my personal feelings about these albums, and you're welcome to yours. I'd like to hear your opinions down here in the comments. Okay, so let's get this thing going. Their last official album as a band while Pete Ham was still alive. 1974. This album wasn't out for very long. It actually was issued. Then there was a lot of legal issues again with their manager who was ripping them off, and Warner Brothers was like, "Wait a minute, you guys, your management's terrible." I mean, I'm not getting into it totally, but like I said, there are videos about this. So anyway, Warner Brothers said, "Nah, we're really kind of not going to deal with you anymore." they put out this fine, and all these albums are really, really, really good. You know, so don't there's just because this is at the bottom doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad album. Okay, Wish You Were Here. Um, Issued, like I said, I heard that this was only out for about 6 months. I don't know how true it was. I didn't think I'd ever find a copy of this. This was like the last Badfinger album that I'd found a copy of because it was just elusive, and I found it in a local record store. It was like I looked at it and I went, no, this can't be real. I've never really seen this too much. It was, and it was a fairly decent price. I think the price is on here, $4.99 for this. Unfortunately, the record store owner put the price tag on the jacket itself, but whatever. Wish You Were Here. Still a good album. I mean, they were really trying hard, you know. So anyway, that is at the bottom, but doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. So don't, you know. The next one, we're still in this era of the Warner Brothers years. I know some people are going, wait a minute, why are you putting these below the later stuff? And I'll get to that. But Badfinger. I remember being at a local radio station that I had worked at. This was about 1982, and I wasn't aware of this album, and I found it in the library, and I went into the production studio and just started dropping the needle. And the song, although there were lots of really good songs on here, a song that I really took to and really liked a lot was the song Lonely You. Don't know why. There's other probably better songs on here. I just, at that point in time, I still fully didn't understand the history of Badfinger, but that song just struck me, and I still absolutely love that song. But Badfinger's 1974. This is on Warner Brothers as well. Badfinger, Bad Finger. Next one. I wish I had an original copy of this. I've seen one at a record show in Boston, and it was going for like $1,000 in like 1986, 87. I was like, I don't think I have $1,000 I can spare, but I was able to pick it up and touch it, caress it a little bit, get very intimate with it for a few seconds. It was a very short love affair that I had with it. All I could ever find, and I found this right about the same time, is a bootleg of this. Badfinger's, well, actually, it isn't Badfinger, it's the Iveys. This is not a very good sounding recording. Even though this is a bootleg, it's good sounding for what it is. But the original recording of this album, which failed miserably, it was on Apple. Released, I believe, in Japan, and possibly some of you smarter guys will let me know down in the comments exactly where it did not get a release in the U.S. Only the song Maybe Tomorrow got released in the U.S. and barely dented the Hot 100 charts. I do have a copy of that 45, but the album was never released. I think it might have been released in the UK. Something's telling me Germany, but I think it's Japan and the UK. Anyway, like I said, you guys are smarter than I am. Right down there, let us all know. I know for certain that this was issued in Japan. Didn't do well. Not a bad album. Half this album was lifted and cleaned up, remixed for the Magic Christian soundtrack, which we're going to get to a little later on. But Maybe Tomorrow by the Iveys. I have all these on CD too, with a lot of bonus tracks and stuff, and this sounds much better on the CD. So anyway, this I believe was reissued. I'd mentioned on the video for Straight Up that Straight Up was issued in like the early 90s, 1991, by Apple, but it was a limited issue. We didn't get it here in America, at least I never saw it, and it was an extra disc with bonus stuff. And I believe that this did get that treatment as well. And I'd love to get a copy of those remasters and stuff, but every time I look on Discogs, they're just not in my price range. So anyway, the Iveys, Maybe Tomorrow. Now this is where people are going to go, what are you doing? This is sentimental. These are the first Badfinger albums that I ever owned. So they have that sentimental sentimental connection with me. And even though Pete Ham is not on these, I still think they're really solid pop albums. I think that they still capture that Badfinger vibe. So 1981, Say No More. I think Tom Evans was the only original on this. I like this. Hold On. I remember when Hold On came out, and of course I was cheering our local radio station. Play that song. Play it. Play it. Play it to friggin' death. Let's make it a hit for these boys. You know, like I had that much influence, but and they did play it not just for me because it's a good early '80s pop song. This is a good early '80s pop album that just didn't make it. It was the last attempt. Of course, Evans killed himself a few years after that. He was in financial dire straits, and it was just a horror. Two members of this band hanging themselves because they wanted this so bad, and it was so elusive, and it took everything, including their lives. So we best appreciate this music. But I like this album. This is not in print anymore. I'm not even sure if this was ever issued on CD. I have a digital copy of this that sounds like it could have been from a CD. Sounds really, really good. So, but Badfinger, Say No More. This was the album that shortly after I got into Badfinger came out. So it's really sentimental for me. And I like this album. I think, again, this is a great album. Airways, 1979. I remember just being so excited that at the time really was one of my favorite bands, even though I knew hardly anything about them. You know, I'm a teenager, and it's like, wow, this is just, they just put out a new album. And I looked, and it's like two guys are on the cover. I didn't know the two guys, who they were. I didn't realize they were the only two remaining members. I didn't know anything. I just knew that the album was really good. You know, so I dug it. 1979. I still like this album, and I still, even though there were some singles released off of it, again, for the life of me, I do not understand why this didn't take off. They were on a major record label. They were on Elektra, and it should have gone much further than it did, and it just didn't. These guys were cursed. I don't know. I don't necessarily believe in that type of stuff, but there was something going on where it wasn't happening. I recommend this. This album is still on. I looked it up actually. This is still on like Amazon Music, Spotify, all that stuff. So you can hear this. And this was available at one time on CD. So although I do not have this on CD, I'd like to get a copy of it on CD. Again, I have a digital copy transferred from a CD in the computer. But Airwaves, great Badfinger album. Okay, now we're going to go to an album that I really loved, and I'm glad that they remixed this. This originally came out in 2000, and I don't think anybody was really happy about it. It was just they were using the rough mixes that were made at the time. I know that the estate of the members of the band that had passed were like, nah. But in 2000, I believe it was 2004, yeah, it was last year, 2024, this was remixed and remastered and got the approval of not pretty much, but of everybody in the band. So we finally get to hear this album. As far as I'm concerned, the way that it should have been heard. I'm talking about Head First. This was an album that they were working on in Abbey Road Studios at the end when Warner Brothers was trying to figure out what the hell they were going to do with them, and everything was falling apart. And you would think that with everything falling apart, I mean, really falling apart. Things had been falling apart with this band for a while, but I mean, when everything was falling apart, you know, I mean, I'm talking like you may not have a home next week, okay, falling apart. They were able to go in and make this. And if you've never heard this before, I really, really, really recommend you listen to this album. This is classic, amazingly wonderful Badfinger. It was the last thing we would get with Pete Ham This was just a fantastic, fantastic album. It's available on all the streaming services. I believe you can even get this on vinyl. I just opted to get the CD at the time. Honestly, at the time when I got this last year, I was like, I don't know what this is going to sound like. I mean, this is my impression was this is just leftover stuff. And then when I did more research, it was like, no, this was an album that was pretty much really done, and it just never happened. It was roughly mixed, and it just never happened. This is the story of this band. So I highly recommend. I honestly recommend all of these albums if you really want to get a good overlook at this band. But anyway, head first, Badfinger's really their last hurrah, and what hurrah it was. Okay, now we're getting into the what I would consider the classic Apple era. Okay, 1970. If I can pick this up here, Magic Christian. I don't know if anybody's ever seen that movie. You don't need to waste that much time of your life. I did it for you. You know, I don't know. Maybe you dig it. I was like, okay, whatever. And from my memory, Ringo was in it. From my memory, that was. But here we go with my memory. Whenever I say memory, if memory serves me correctly, double check, because you know, I'm getting older here. This is a good album. The songs that were taken off of Maybe Tomorrow do sound a bit better on here. They were cleaned up a little bit. Of course, this has Come and Get It, backed with Rock of Ages. I vividly remember that because I do remember at a yard sale as a teenager I found that 45, and I was so happy that I found that. Finally had a copy of that. But 1970, of course, Come and Get It, written by Sir Paul McCartney, and you're going to get a remastered version of that in a couple months when the anthologies get re-released in November. Okay? I might be doing a video very soon again. I did an initial video on that, but I might do another one just about my thoughts. I haven't quite worked out my thoughts on that yet. I have super mixed feelings about that anthology coming up. But anyway, maybe we'll get to that later. We're talking about Badfinger here, but fantastic, wonderful album, classic Badfinger. Some people don't like this next one as much. Maybe they wouldn't rate it as high. I really like this album. I had a neighbor when I was living in New Hampshire back in the late 80s, and I was thumbing through his record collection, because that's the thing. If I came into your house and I noticed you had a record collection, I would ask permission, but then I would be down on the floor kind of thumbing through it. And he had this. He had Badfinger's Ass. And I was, like most people, it's like, what is this? What is this cover? An ass? What is it about? What is it? And I said, dude, can I borrow this? And he was gracious enough at the time. Yeah, borrow it. Brought it home. It was the first time I heard this album. I loved it. Apple of My Eye, Constitution. Great, really, really good album. Of course, at this point in time, they were being abandoned by Apple. Of course, there was a lot of legal crap going on, and some of the members of the Beatles weren't getting along so well, and it just was not a good time. But this was a good album, that I believe Apple of My Eye was issued. As a matter of fact, I know it was issued as a single. I have it upstairs, and it's a good song. There's no reason why that couldn't have been a hit. It bombed, and I think it had a lot to do with the fact that the record company just abandoned them, quite honestly. But again, not available on vinyl. These are not available on vinyl. There really isn't anything other than this. I think pretty much everything else by Badfinger is not available on vinyl anymore. But if you can, you can stream this. It's available on CD. I have a copy of the CD upstairs too, and it's got bonus tracks. So it's a good buy. Okay, that is my third favorite Badfinger album, Ass. Next two, I think, so uncontroversial. It's just, these are, everybody, I think. No Dice. 19 '70, the very end of '70, they came up here and played in Maine at the Portland Expo, and they had Mongo Jerry. It was a three-bill act. It was Badfinger, Mongo Jerry, and somebody else. And I wasn't quite old enough to go. I didn't even know who these guys were at the time. But some people in Maine actually got to see Badfinger in their prime. And there are bootlegs of it. They're very terrible sounding bootlegs, but the band seemed to be really good. So anyway, no matter what, love that song. This, of course, has the later to be performed Nielsen song Without You, which Nielsen would take to number one in 1972. I like Nielsen's version better because it's just more polished. It seems finished. This doesn't quite seem finished. It's almost like it's still good. It's there. The song is still beautiful, but I think that Richard Perry, who produced the Nielsen version, I think he just took something that was really good and just polished it and made it what it is. So anyway, another fantastic album. Highly recommend this one too. Did I say that about all the other ones? Yes, I did. And of course, not too much to be said about this one because we just talked about this album a couple days ago. But my favorite Badfinger album by far. And this is a different version, a different copy. This one I actually pulled has ringware. I actually have two copies of this. This is my first copy that I got back in the '80s. Found it at Nuggets in Boston, and it does not have its price sticker on it. But I paid like $10 for this even back then. Just like 15 years after it had been released, because it was just such a valued album, and it still is a fantastic album, and it is my favorite album by Badfinger. What's your favorite album by Badfinger? Why don't you comment down? I've said that before, but right down there, right? Leave a comment. While you're at it, please, 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 oh, please, 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 I'm not begging, am I? Like, subscribe, and share. Let people know about the channel. I'm really trying to help me make this grow so we can reach more people. It would really make the old man happy. Okay? Okay. All right, everybody. Until next time, peace and love.